Janice Cohen.
Scott,
So
Nell.
with Mutual of Omaha, I can't help but think of, because I think of Mutual of Omaha. Remember the commercial?
Yeah, and not only that, but when we were told that we were joining with Mutual of Omaha, all I could
Hmm.
think of is jaguars and lions and elephants. I mean, as a child, I used to watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom every Sunday night. That was part of our
Same
Sunday
here.
night routine.
Well, what we're doing is we're showing our age because there's some
Yeah,
people
I'm cool with it.
in the group where we know each other where they hear that and they're going, huh? And I said, just like, shut up, young person. Just be quiet.
Really.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't care. I mean, you were with a different company when I met you, and I honestly don't
Yes.
care where you are because I know who you are, and you've been my go-to for years. And there's a lot of really great reverse mortgage specialists that if you weren't around, I could be in great hands. But it's just like it's so tough because you've always been so good to me, and you really care, and you're always putting the client first. And so to me, and I mean, you're the kind of person that will advise them if maybe a reverse mortgage isn't the right fit for you right now. And you and I've had those conversations before. And so anyway, I think
I
you're
would say
awesome,
50% of the
and I
time.
wanted to have you on
Thank you.
board because instead of hearing about rats and possums in the house and all sorts of stuff, I thought we could hear about situations that you've dealt with. And so that's what it's about. Real estate health, it's about challenges that you've been through.
I real estate hell, yeah, there I have some hellish tales to tell.
Hmm.
um I it the people with whom I am dealing very often, number one, they have deferred maintenance. Number two, their estate planning documents are not
Hmm.
always what they should be. And I'll tell you a little bit about more about that shortly. But they also
Sure.
have some complex family relationships, and that can be
Hmm.
very tricky. So there are a lot of factors that go into making a transaction more hellish, if you want it, if you want to
Uh-huh.
put it that way, than if a house is maintained regularly the way it should be, and trust documents are up to date, and there isn't a tree growing out of the basement, which actually happened to me when I was starting my career in New Jersey. I'd go to a house, get the application, get all the supporting documents, and then I ordered the
Hmm.
appraisal like you do. Appraiser
Hmm.
says, everything's okay, but there is a tree growing out of the foundation of the house, and this needs to be remedied before we can fund your loan. And of course, I don't do a house inspection. I mean, I do a cursory inspection, what I can see, what the borrower is willing to show me, and that's okay. But I never expected a tree growing out of the foundation, so that was a problem. But
But
I
so
will
how
say,
big was it? I mean, was it what if it would and how does it survive? Was there like a some type of light coming through? I mean, how does a tree even start?
well, that's a really good question. I will say that it was this whole development all had sump pumps and French drains because the
Hmm.
basements were so prone to flooding. And
Right.
so there was plenty of access to water. This tree had a will to live, it had
Hmm.
germinated and it was sprouting, and there were windows in the basement, I guess enough light, enough water, and photosynthesis,
Wow.
and voila, you have a little oak tree making its way into the world. So
Oh
not
no, it's an
ideal.
oak tree. So you know those are protected. You could get busted right now for asking to take that out. I heard
Oh my goodness.
recently with one of a provisor's member that you know um, was purchasing a house and there was an oak tree and she was like, "What am I going to do? This is right where I want to put in, my like another bedroom or something like that." And I said, "I don't know." I said, "I know what you could do that you're not supposed to do." And she goes, "Tell me." So, but how to deal with an oak tree? And so, but I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to get myself in trouble because I truly believe you can always leave the tree if you can. But there's times when what they do is
Absolutely.
if it has to be removed, then they'll say, can we put it somewhere else, which is very hard, or that you have to plant several. So there has to be a really good reason to do it. Those
We
darn
love
oak trees.
nature. Those
Uh-huh.
darn, I have a giant sequoia in my backyard that does not belong in my backyard, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's protected. But we always get nervous when the Santa Ana winds come because I think this tree could destroy my house. But
Oh my God.
so far, there she is. We're leaving her there
This
for
new
now.
listing I have, I drove up. You couldn't even see the house because it had 5 redwoods. And it was just behind this wall. So I told the landscaper and our project manager, I said, look, I love these trees. I don't like the cypress though. The cypress are going to kill the foundation and they're too close.
Hmm.
But these trees are majestic. And so he went through and just groomed it so beautifully. I went over yesterday to shoot and I'll send you the pictures. I was like, oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh, we did it. We did it. Good thing
What
that
I
they weren't
love
oaks.
about your what I love about your posts, I'm trying to get a piece of hair out of my eyes. What I love about your posts, Scott, is that you always capture the most flattering angles of every house that you list. And it always looks like a house that I think I could live there. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to, buy every single house that I see that you post.
Mm-hmm.
It just, they look so beautiful. And I always feel like a kid in a candy store when I'm looking at your listings because it's just every picture is better than the next and makes me feel like I should stop by for tacos when you're having your open house and just snoop around. I love this house. You're so good at just making every house seem so attractive and as though anyone who's seeing these pictures would feel so comfortable living there.
Well, I appreciate that. I can tell you this, if if we do our magic to the house and they allow us to, and the seller doesn't say, "Oh my gosh, we should have done this a long time ago," or "Oh my gosh, we should stay," I'm disappointed. I'm expecting them to say, "Damn, this is nice." And
Yeah.
we pride ourselves on making sure that the house, like the one that I was just telling you about with the redwoods, it was very messy. I mean, it was tons and tons of stuff and deferred maintenance and all that. But and you could have just done it as is, which I think a lot of agents would. But we went in there and really worked because it had a really nice lot. We said, okay, let's start with the exterior because I need this money shot here. And then let's go inside, and we just made decisions very strategically without spending too much money to get us to the best net. And then we did pre-inspections and all that stuff because if you see a house with water damage and all that, they're going to get in there and ask you for a ton of money. And if you have redwoods out there, you know that your sewer line, there could be an issue. So we did all these pre-inspections ahead of time so that now we hand them off. And then when they ask us for that, we say, well, didn't you see that before you submitted the offer? And they said, yeah. I said, so what's your next question? Because I won't even have there's no conversation. We're not going to renegotiate. So
Wow.
do you remember, did I refer you to, how do I say it? Because I don't want to say someone's name here. But there was an estate in Tarzana that I went in there and the person we were just talking about, Rebecca, was involved in it or became
Mhm.
involved in it. But I went in there and I said, "So what's the plan?" It was an old man. He was moving out. The wife, unfortunately, was in extended care, and it was just a very difficult situation. Were from out of town, and the first question was, "Okay, well," because they didn't have any money. I said, "Well, there are different ways to potentially do this." And I reached out to you, and you said, "Well, we can't because they don't live here." And I went, "Damn it, Janice! How does that
Yeah,
work?"
the home has to be their primary residence. That's kind
Right.
of rule one. We are
Mm-hmm.
not in the business of lending on income properties, commercial properties, nothing along those lines. These loans follow FHA guidelines. So
Mm-hmm.
there
Okay.
does need to be the, component of this is my primary home. I'm living here. I'm taking care of the home. I'm paying the bills as they come in and
Right.
all sorts of, the way a person who is living in their home generally
Mm-hmm.
tends to care for their home versus a vacant home. And, part of what we look at when we make the determination, because sometimes someone will say, well, yeah, it is my primary residence. And then, in underwriting, we could find out that the home was listed for rent on the MLS, or
Mm-hmm.
that the type of insurance that they have indicates that it is a
Uh,
vacant home, or that it is an income property. So many people, I'm sure, think there are ways that I can fool the company, but you don't ever want to play that game,
right.
because your loan could become due and payable if this is discovered, and you just don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be between a rock and a hard place. You've done a reverse mortgage, and next thing you know, it's due and payable, and now what do? You are in a situation where you have to make decisions very quickly. You're not in
Right.
control anymore, and so it's always best to do a reverse mortgage when it truly is in the best interest of the borrower, and
Mm-hmm.
not deceptively, um, whatever the uh, whatever the circumstances may be.
Right.
It, it 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 doesn't usually work out well. And
Right.
I'll give you an example. Actually,
Babe,
this
oh, you got
was
a real estate health story?
I have several that I've written down. Well, the first thing I want to say, and I'm sure you tell this to all of anyone that you discuss listing, selling, buying, you tell them, of course, put your house into a trust.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to tell you that, especially with a reverse mortgage, it is so important to put the house into a trust when you do the reverse mortgage, or when you buy the house in the first place. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you didn't put it in a trust when you bought it, please, please, please put it into a trust. And the reason I say that is that if something happens to the borrower and the house, the loan, okay, becomes due and payable at the
Mm-hmm.
time of the passing of the borrower.
Right.
If the house has to go through probate, you're dealing with a situation where there's going to be a notice of default that is sent out,
Mm-hmm.
because probate takes a lot longer than 6 months. A loan is supposed to be repaid within 6 months. You can apply for extensions. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, if there is a probate, we can do a 90-day extension and a second 90-day extension. But unless you want to spend money on a lawyer, which nobody wants to spend money on a lawyer reactively, you want to spend money
Mm-hmm.
on a lawyer proactively, right?
Right.
To get that trust set up so that you're in great shape when something happens to the borrower, and you can go ahead and sell the house. It's clear who has authority to list the house
Mm-hmm.
with a realtor like you, Scott. But if there is not a trust, then we're dealing with a probate. We're dealing with the attorney who's doing the administration is calling me and saying, Janice, I see that you did a reverse mortgage for one of my clients who's passed away. Now we're getting notices of default from the servicer. What do I do? And that those hours that the attorney is spending
Right.
trying to figure out how to position the family to not have to deal with a default, those are billable
Mm-hmm.
hours, people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the couple of $1,000s that you're going to spend up front to do a trust is going to save you thousands of dollars on a probate that you don't want to have to deal with. So that's
I
number
agree.
one. That prevents a
Mm-hmm.
lot of hellish things from happening. Another way to prevent hellish things from happening, and I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
this and it's going to sound so odd, but in your trust, you're going to have a power of attorney, right? Because we all do. My husband has a durable power of attorney over me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a durable power of attorney over him. I'm sure you and Tatiana have powers of attorney over one another. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is so important when you get a power of attorney and you are an older person,
Mm-hmm.
you should absolutely get a doctor's letter
Mm-hmm.
saying that at the time that these documents were executed,
Oh, I
I
see where you're going.
was fully competent to execute these documents. My husband was fully competent to execute his documents, and I'll tell you why. I get a phone call sometimes. There's a power of attorney, but the niece will say to me, my aunt hasn't been to a doctor in 20 years, or my uncle hasn't been to visit a doctor in
Mm-hmm.
20 years. That's going to be a little problematic, because what a reverse mortgage company requires is that you must have a letter from a doctor at the time that we're going to approve durable power of attorney documents, saying that at the time of the execution of that document, that this person was competent to sign. And when I tell this
That is
even
such
to
great advice.
attorneys, their heads go, and they'll say, well, what about a certificate of independent review? Certainly, your bank will accept a certificate of independent review. And guess what? We don't. It has to be a
Wow.
doctor's letter. It has to
Wow,
be a
look at
doctor's letter.
you. I like that.
It is
So,
so
have you,
amazing.
because I've never heard anyone say that before. And to me, it's just, when you say it, it makes such great sense. And by not doing
Right.
that, what can you imagine the problems you can get into?
Oh, yeah. Now, if you go to see a doctor regularly, great. Then chances are, I'm going to be talking, or
Mm-hmm.
one of your children, let's say Josie, is going to call me and say, my dad just turned 98 and we need to have a caregiver come into the house and we want to do a reverse mortgage. Okay, Josie, is
Mm-hmm.
there a doctor that your dad sees? Oh, yes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
power of attorney. And yes, my father he's so good. He goes to the doctor every year, whether he needs to or not. Great. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get those documents that we need. But there are plenty of people who don't like to go to doctors, or they go to,
Right.
alternative healers, maybe, or
Mm-hmm.
they just don't document their healthcare visits, and they don't have a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with someone. They maybe just go to, an urgent care when they have a sinus infection, if they've been
Mm-hmm.
fortunate enough not to have serious health issues. But having a doctor's letter, you're going to need it when you're 98 years old, Scott. And my children are going to do the reverse mortgage. My kids are going to work with Josie to get you a reverse mortgage for your care.
The fact that you can call out my wife's name and my kids' names is very impressive. I've got to say. I've got to say.
Well, you have such a beautiful family. I always
They're pretty
love when
awesome.
I get your holiday card and I'm looking at these
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous smiling faces. And then you write, Happy Holidays from the real Nell team. And I think, of
Yeah.
course, that is the real Nell team.
Yeah.
I've got my own team that includes my husband and my dog and my son and his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But, we don't tend to think of it that way. But when you get that holiday card, it's like the real Nell team. Yes,
Yeah. Well, that's where it all stems from. I guess that's my big why I work so hard, why I
of
do what I do.
course.
Yeah. Hey, so do you have any other health stories?
I
You
do,
gotta
in
have a few.
fact. So I get a lot of my business from private professional fiduciaries, which I
Mm-hmm.
love, but they're always really, really hairy.
Mm-hmm.
These are
The
circumstances
attorneys are
where,
Harry, or the attorneys are Harry, or the situation.
yes, and yes,
You
and
always
yes,
you said they're always Harry. I'm going okay.
they're always hairy. I
Okay.
feel like I feel like doing laser hair removal treatments to
Oh
all
my
these deals
gosh.
that come to me from private professional fiduciaries. Very often families are fighting, which is why there's a private professional fiduciary.
Right.
Um, Often a child has tried to take advantage of a parent, and it can be kind of tricky. It can be tricky. But one
Totally.
of the more memorable situations that I've had was there. It was a situation, I think it was in Glendale, and there were 3 units on one property. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, 3 units on one property, very usual and customary in Glendale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come to find out, one of the units was not permitted. And,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not permitted, and you're applying for an FHA loan, you have to get the permit. You have to get the unit certified, which is going to take a very
Sure.
long time.
Hmm.
Uh,
And costly.
or you can empty out the unit of cabinets and plumbing, and you can kind of work your way around it. So I said to the fiduciary, okay, I have good news and bad news. One of these units is not permitted. The appraiser is asking that we remove the stove so that it's no
Hmm.
longer a residence. We can say it's a craft room. You can do that.
Hmm. It's a nice
So he says,
storage room.
okay, yeah. He's like, okay, let's
Hmm.
make it a craft room. We can do that. Okay, let's do it. But I said, wait a minute. First, I want to have a closer look at the insurance.
Hmm.
It turns out that the borrower of this home, the owner of the home, was living in the unpermitted unit. And I
Oh
said, okay,
no.
you can't make this woman homeless by removing her kitchen from her house and possibly taking out, you know, uh, cabinets. I said, I think the best and most prudent route to go here is a private money loan. And so I ended up referring them for a private money loan. So
Hmm.
that was, of course, I always feel right when I can do the right thing for a client,
Sure.
even if it means turning them away and referring them to someone who's going to be able to help them. And, I just didn't want to see them gutting one of the houses and, you know, it probably the interest rate was going to be a little bit higher for them to do
Yeah.
a private money loan, but
But you
it
got to
was
do the
it was
right thing.
yeah, always have to do the right thing. You really, really do.
You
I've
know what I
had
call
some
it? I call
what
it business karma. It's like when you're
I
in business and you do the right thing. Like today, I turned away a deal
mhm.
because I said, and it was one of my team, and she said, well, what would it take to get into this property? Do you have an investor? I said, I have an investor all day, but my investor is probably going to be at around 700 for this house. If you go to market, you're probably going to get 775 to 8. So it'd be great if you sold it to me because I get paid and then I get to sell it with my investor. But I said, I don't think that's the right thing to do unless there's a compelling reason, like a really, truly compelling reason. That what they should do is bite the bullet and go to market, and then you're going to get them an extra 50 to 100,000, and they need that money. So, but it was like, okay, so and I always do this in my head. I calculated. I said, okay, so that would have been 30, 40, 50. All right, 60 grand. Okay, but I did the right thing. I want to do that, and and then I get rid of the money in my head. I'm going, okay, it was never yours. It was never yours.
That's it. It's so interesting. We never count our chickens before they hatch, of
Mm-hmm.
course. I had a referral from a forward mortgage loan officer in a completely different company. He said, "Look, this lady doesn't. I can't lend to her. She, you talk to her, see if this is something you can help her with." And I had a great conversation with her. She was ready to sign anywhere I told her. I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Tell me what your objective is." And she said, "Well, I would like to stay here another 6 months and sell the house. I want to do things with the proceeds of the reverse mortgage and then sell the house and move to an
Mm-hmm.
apartment closer to where my sons are living." And I said, "You do realize that there's an upfront cost to doing the reverse mortgage because
Right.
a reverse mortgage has an upfront mortgage insurance premium representing
Mm-hmm.
2% of the appraised value of the home
Mm-hmm.
up to the lending
That's no
limit."
joke.
I It is no joke. I said it's going to cost you about $25,000 to get into a reverse mortgage. I said
Mm-hmm.
she had her house listed for sale at this time. She felt it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't selling because she hadn't updated a bathroom. I said, "Drop your price by 25,000." She was actually in Texas. I said, "Drop
Mm-hmm.
your price by 25,000 and see if you can get it sold." Rather than giving me $25,000 or giving my company
Mm-hmm.
$25,000 to do this loan for you for 6 months of, you're going to have to do renovations that may or may not improve your chances of selling it at the price that you think you should be able to get for the house. and she
Right.
was, so again, business karma. It's been a lot of business karma for me this year
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, interest rates have been high. Thankfully, they're coming down. But I have
Mm-hmm.
been, normally when my seasoned clients for whom I've done reverse mortgages call me and they say, "Can I get any more money out?" This year, I've had to say, "Sylvia, I would love to help you, but it's going to be at a much higher interest rate. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
wait and see what happens." And I hope that Sylvia will call me back. I'm going to stay in touch with Sylvia, of course, but even though it's been, a tricky year, I don't want Sylvia to do a reverse mortgage that's not going to really benefit her, right?
Right.
If she has a perfectly good reverse mortgage now at a really good interest rate, let's talk when the rates go down. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really, I don't want to make it sound like, I mean, let me put it this way. I've done plenty of reverse mortgages this year for
Mm-hmm.
people who really have a pain point. I have to do the reverse mortgage, Janice. My husband has Parkinson's.
Exactly.
He needs 12 hours a day of care. I'm 86. I can't turn him over. I can't help
Mm-hmm.
him get up to go to the bathroom. I can't lift him. I can't this, that, the other thing. Well, of course, you'll do anything you can to get the help for
Sure.
your husband that you need. Another call. A couple is they're just running out of money. They've called
Mm-hmm.
me. They can't sell their house. They're both alive. They bought their house for $200,000 in San Marino. The house is worth
Mm-hmm.
$8 million now. So what are they? They bought it in 1972. Just
Wow.
imagine what the long-term capital gains taxes would be if they were to
Mm-hmm.
sell that house. It would be
Right.
ridiculous. They love the house. They don't want to move, but they need to have some money to do the things that they want to do. Even if, they have a business manager, they have, they get new Mercedes every couple of years. They have a lifestyle that they want to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? They worked hard for that house. Let them take that money and do with it what they want to do.
Right. And stay where they're at and enjoy those
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there are
So do
all
you ever
kinds of
find,
situations.
oh, no, go ahead.
I was, I was going to say there are all kinds of situations that lead to my phone ringing, and I never know when the phone rings. It could be a gray divorce. Do you know that people in their 70s and 80s, and of course you know because you list homes of couples that are divorcing, and
Yes.
some of them have hair my color, and it's a very sad thing. But one spouse may buy out the other spouse, and
Mm-hmm.
they can do that using a reverse mortgage. And then there are a
Hey,
whole
hold on
host
one
of
second.
other.
Jonathan, is that you? Come here real quick. So this is how I do the podcast. Meet Janice Cohen.
Hi, Janice Cohen.
Yes. Jonathan
Hi,
Daniel is one of my sales
Jonathan.
partners.
Looks
Yeah.
like you're in
Good.
paradise with all the flowers.
I'm so glad you can see them clearly. I purposely wanted to show off my garden in this podcast.
Not well. It
I
is
just,
really pretty. It almost doesn't look real. And yet, we
well,
see when you got a
when
guy with his young eyes, he can tell for sure.
33 and counting.
I
He
would
is. I have a son
the only
older than
thing that
him.
the only thing that would have made it better is if a little hummingbird landed on my head, and then I would
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
felt like Snow
hummingbird,
White.
butterflies will manifest it.
Mhm.
Yup.
So, have I introduced you guys yet? Because she's like an amazing
Not yet.
reverse work. I'm going to connect you guys because Jonathan, he's been around for a while. He's done over like 35 flips, and then he wanted to get into sales as well. And when I met him, I went, okay, we got to work together. And so this guy's going to be a rock star. So I'll connect you guys for sure.
I have a great mentor
What
to
I
my
love
right, so feelings are mutual.
Yes, you do.
What I love about you, Scott, first of all, you have the most amazing team. And I love that you take a team approach to your business
Definitely.
because your clients get the benefit of every person on your team has a different sense of genius about marketing,
Oh, it's so sweet.
technology, personality, vision of how a
Mm-hmm.
house should look when it's listed. And it's just,
Right.
one person can't do all of that.
Right. Right. Well, what's great too is that, like with Jonathan, is we have this listing that we are working on together, and I need to take off to spend some time with my mom, and so I'm going. hey, do you mind handling this? And he goes, can you just stop? Just leave. I've got this.
I have it under control.
Yeah.
He's going to enjoy the moment where he's going.
Yeah, so that's another good piece of it. But yeah, it's been working out really well. It's a love fest over here. What can I say? I don't have a hummingbird, but I've got Jonathan.
I'm a hummingbird, apparently.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you for all the stories. Really appreciate it. I've got a bunch to choose from already, and I've been taking notes. I don't know. Can you tell if I'm taking notes? Because I try to be subtle.
No, I couldn't tell that you're taking notes. You were
see how convincing I am? I just sit there like this.
It's not bad.
Like that. It all works out.